Hey guys, welcome along to Sceam Up Botty. I am Rodney Stewart, your host. This is one of the best Star Trek episodes, I think, in the entire run of the original series. You get to see the relationship between Spock and his father in this one in a big bad way, and his loyalty to the Enterprise and Starfleet. It's just a tasty little episode. Episode 10, Season 2, Journey to Babel. The Enterprise, of course, is transporting the Federation ambassadors to a conference on the planet Babel to discuss the admission of the Corellian system. I'm going to go with Corellian system into the Federation. The system is a prime source of dilithium crystals, of course we need this here for starships and whatnot, but is underpopulated and unprotected, a situation some would prefer to maintain by keeping Corellian out of the Federation. I don't know why I'm putting that I at the end of it. Corellian. Sarek, who is a Vulcan ambassador, boards the Enterprise with his human wife, Amanda, ignoring Spock's greeting completely. Kirk learns that Sarek is in fact Spock's father, now estranged because he had disapproved of Spock's decision to join Starfleet rather than attend the Vulcan Science Academy. If you've seen the Star Trek, the remake of Star Trek, the movie, the reboot, let's just say, you do get to see that in detail in that episode. At the beginning, during a reception for the passengers, a Tellarite ambassador demands to know Sarek's position on Cardan getting into the Federation. Pushed for a response, Sarek refers to the need to protect the planet from unauthorized mining observations with which Tellarite ships have been involved. The Tellarite ambassador, takes offence at the allegation, and the confrontation briefly becomes physical before Kirk intervenes, warning all parties to keep order on a ship. Meanwhile, up on the bridge, Uhura has detected an encoded transmission beamed from the Enterprise to a fast-moving vessel at an extreme range of their sensors. Shortly afterward, Ambassador Gav is found murdered, his neck broken by what Spock describes as an ancient Vulcan method of execution called Talshaya, casting suspicion on Sarek. It's weird that his son would do that, but they're highly logical, the Vulcans, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you are. If the shoe fits, you're going to end up wearing it. During questioning, Sarek suffers a cardiovascular event and is rushed to the sick bay, where Chief Medical Officer McCoy determines that he requires immediate surgery. Because there's a shortage of the rare T-negative blood type, Spock volunteers to donate some of his own blood for the operation, using an experimental stimulant for increased blood production. Plans for the procedure come to a halt when Telav, a member of the Andorian delegation, stabs Captain Kirk. Kirk subdues him, but is seriously wounded and taken to sick bay, while Telev is imprisoned in the brig in accordance with regulations, and despite Amanda's emotional plea, Spock refuses to serve as a blood donor and in turn take command of the Enterprise over any other officer, as the situation is too critical and command regulations are, they're strict on the matter of personal privilege. It's just, you're a Starfleet officer, the good of your ship comes first. So Spock, been highly logical, is like, you know what, this is my father, but in this situation, the safety of the Enterprise and the mission and all the ambassadors takes precedent. So, hearing of Spock's refusal to relinquish command and having recovered slightly and able to walk, Kirk returns to the bridge to relieve Spock and orders him to sick bay, intending to, as soon as Spock's gone, turn over command of the Enterprise to Mr. Scott, the next in line, and then hide out in his quarters until the operation is completed. At this point, Uhura picks up another encoded transmission from inside the Enterprise and traces the source back to the brig. Kirk decides to stay on the bridge. When Telev is searched, he attacks one of the security officers. He's shot with a phaser. Phaser's on stun, doesn't kill him. But when he falls, one of his antennae on his head breaks. Turns out it's fake and conceals a small transceiver. The unidentified vessel closes in on the Enterprise and attacks, moving too quickly for the Enterprise to lock on with weapons, phasers or torpedoes. They can't take this thing out. The ship takes several hits from the attacking vessel. It's smaller, it's not as strong, but it's a little bit quicker, and it does cripple the Enterprise, almost cripples the Enterprise. At this point, McCoy is doing the operation between Sarek and Spock's hooked up to him with the blood transfusion happening. Kirk orders Telev brought to the bridge. I think I'm saying his name, Telev, properly. If not, I do apologise. They get this guy up to the bridge and questions him himself about the attacking ship. This guy, completely unresponsive. Kirk decides on a ruse, shutting down internal power to make the Enterprise appear crippled in space. The attacker approaches, drops out of warp to sublight speed, and the Enterprise takes its shot, damages it with just a nice little phaser attack, and the ship's completely disabled. And they're going to get these guys, take them as prisoners. They're going to take Telev back to the Federation. They're going to question, they're going to find out what's going on. But the ship in space self-destructs. Telev reveals that both he and the ship were in suicide missions, and then he collapses and dies from a delayed action poison. He thought he had more time than he did, but he miscalculated and drops dead in the bridge. Kirk then returns to sick bay to further care for further care for his own injuries, and he finds Spock and Sarek both alert. The operation has been a success. Spock speculates that Telev and the attacking ship were of Orion or origin, and the speed and power of the latter were consistent with a suicide mission, with all their energy dedicated to an attack. This ship was going like warp 10 or whatever. They knew they didn't need to conserve any energy to return because they were going on a mission that was one way and one way only. Telev's mission on aboard the Enterprise, Kirk and Spock presume, was to sow distrust among the Federation members and weaken Enterprise prior to attack. In support of this theory is the fact that the Orion had been raiding cards and would have profit by selling dilithium to both sides if a war had broken out. Amanda asks Sarek at this point if he's going to thank Spock for saving his life, but Sarek simply shrugs and says that it was only logical for him to do that there, and there's no point in thanking logic. Amanda at this point, even though throughout the episode she's human, she's been married to Sarek, she's lived in Vulcan, she's been around Vulcans for a lot of her life, she's brought up a son on Vulcan, and she's very good at keeping that emotion deep down, not expressing much, but she does lose the head at the end of this episode and expresses anger, harping on logic, and hit you and your logic, it's flipping stupid sort of thing. And Spock, noting his mother's exasperation, asks Sarek why he married her, and Sarek replies, at the time, that seemed the logical thing to do, and offers Amanda a hand and ritual gesture of affection. A little bit of comedy on there. You see the relationship between Spock and his father throughout the episode. They don't see eye to eye. Sarek, even though he doesn't express emotion, he just kind of cuts Spock off, doesn't even acknowledge him, more or less. And at the end of the episode, the two of them are in beds next to each other in the sick bay, and they're both giving Vulcan responses. Sarek saying, there's no point in thanking logic. It was the only logical thing to do. Amanda gets upset, and Spock says to Sarek, very emotional, isn't she? Why did you marry her? In that moment, even though they've been both been the cold, logical Vulcans that they are, they're actually having a moment right there, and it was well done. That's good writing. I don't describe it in the detail that it actually needs, but it's just to watch it and see. It's just a moment where a father and son that don't get on are having a moment where they're both on the same page, if only for a moment. That is very nice. McCoy then firmly orders Kirk and Spock to remain quietly in bed, and he's like, you'll be in here for 10 days if you don't do what you're told. He says this to Kirk: if you don't do what you're told, you're going to be in here for 10 days. If you do behave yourself, you'll be out in 2. And anytime someone tries to say anything, McCoy is like, shut up, both to Spock and Kirk. And Kirk just eventually lies down, does what he's told, and at the end of the episode, McCoy smiles, the biggest smile ever, and look at that, I finally got the last word. And we close out there at the end of the episode. Very, very good episode. Let me just go through some of the production notes here. Wyatt. Who is Wyatt? I'm just looking through you see, whenever I'm looking through these notes here, it tends to be they refer to people by the surname alone, but there's nothing to take it somewhere else where I can see, like Wyatt. Wyatt had been widely known for the 1960s sitcom Father Knows Best. Let me see, Wyatt. Jane Wyatt, who plays Amanda. So sorry about that. Widely known for the sitcom Father Knows Best, when she played Eleanor Donahue's mother. The episode, which first aired the week prior to the episode Metamorphosis, featured Donahue as a guest actor. So we did say that in the last episode of the podcast, that the actors in each episode were actually working together in a prior episode. This episode introduced the Andorian and Tellarite species. John Wheeler, the actor who played the Tellarite, Ambassador Gav, had difficulty seeing through the eye holes in his prosthetic makeup and was forced to raise his head in an unseemly, arrogant manner in order to see the other actors. The Andorian antennae spouting from the back of the head in this and other episodes of the original series were depicted in later Star Trek Enterprise series as coming out of the forehead and capable of movement. That's the one thing that did jump out to me in this episode. As I've said multiple times throughout the episodes in this podcast, Star Trek the original series in particular is one that I have always seen in, obviously, reruns and that, very, very rarely until streaming I actually got to sit down and watch the series back to back. It was only if I came across it on TV I'd have seen more and more of it, but that's one thing that jumped out to me was the antennae in this episode. I was like, I remember these guys from Star Trek Enterprise. I think they were in the forehead, but there was on the forehead. But let me get into the reception of the episode here. So what I've got here, there's quite a bit here. So I'm just going to go through the whole list of stuff here. In 1996, for the 30th anniversary, TV Guide ranked Journey to Babel number 5 on its list of the 10 best Star Trek episodes. IO9's 2014 listing of the top 100 Star Trek episodes placed Journey to Babel as the 39th best episode of the series at the time, out of over 700 episodes. They noted this episode introduces Spock's parents and has a focus on diplomacy. It was interesting in this episode to see the Enterprise full of ambassadors and everything. Usually you're very, very used to seeing the Enterprise just been the crew, nobody else. In this episode, there's tons of aliens just walking about the ship. 2015, Sci-Fi ranked the episode as one of the top 10 essential Star Trek original series Spock episodes. The next year, they also ranked guest star Mark Lenard as Sarek and Jane Wyatt as Amanda as the third best guest stars on the original series. 2016, The Hollywood Reporter rated Journey to Babel 15th best episode of the original series. The episode introduces Spock's parents, Sarek and Amanda, who never again appeared in the series but became major characters across the Star Trek franchise. Sarek is the father of Spock's half-brother Spock, introduced in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, and both adopted Michael Burnham, introduced in Star Trek Discovery, as the older sister to Spock. You can either take Burnham or leave Burnham at this point. So 2016, The Washington Post ranked this episode the 9th best live action episode of the Star Trek franchise, citing the tricky politics of Spock's family and Federation politics, and Mark Lenard's performance as Sarek. He's actually fantastic as Sarek. 2016, Business Insider ranked Journey to Babel the 5th best episode of the original series. 2016, Newsweek ranked Journey to Babel as one of the best episodes of the original series. They note that the episode features the Star Trek franchise aliens, Vulcans, Andorians and Tellarites, in addition to humans going on a space conference. They note the episode as sort of a teaching moment about the Federation, politics and Spock's relationship with his parents. That's true. You can see in this episode, everything going on aboard the Enterprise is like a precursor to the Next Generation, where there's a lot of stuff going on there, as far as talking your way through things. 2016, Vox rated this as one of the top 25 essential Star Trek episodes. 2017, and Verse recommended Journey to Babel as essential watching for Star Trek Discovery. 2019, Nerdist included this episode on their Best of Spock binge-watching guide. 2019, Screen Rant ranked this the 8th best episode of the original series, praising it for having a bit of everything that makes the original series great. Creative and interesting aliens, political tension and resolution, personal drama, and high-stakes adventure. There's a lot going on in this episode, to be fair. 2021, CBS said that Journey to Babel was an essential episode in the original series, stating Journey to Babel brings the action, drama and fun, and an excellent showcase of what the series is capable of, and noting the two interesting plots, one of political intrigue and the other of father-son relationship. Again, fan-bloody-tastic. I love this episode. It is great. Again, that little moment between Spock and his father at the end of the episode, where they get that moment where they're both on the same page, to the dismay of Spock's mother. The one thing she wants to see is these two getting on, but the only time in the episode, or any time we've seen it on screen where they are getting along, is whenever she is absolutely raging at the two of them. So, fan-bloody-tastic. Great little episode. If you haven't seen this one, definitely check it out. It is good stuff. Right, I'm going to go, guys. It is getting late, and I have to get up at a ridiculous o'clock tomorrow to get some work done. So, until the next episode, stay safe, and I will talk to you all then. This has been a production of Coins Age Media. Thank you so much for listening.